In this video, we're going to go over the basic structure of an HTML page and how to add some basic content to the page. So as you can see on my screen, I have a very simple web page up. All it has on the web page is a single short paragraph. But there's a lot of code just to make that happen, so just to set up the page. Starting with at the very top, we have our doc type declaration. Every HTML page starts with a doc type declaration, and that's just telling your web browser this is an HTML file. Web browsers have to handle lots of different types of files, so it's good to tell it what type it is. Then it knows that the rest of the content of this document is going to be HTML code. After our doc type declaration, we have our very first HTML tag. So HTML is composed of things called tags, and they're inside of these angle brackets like you see here. So the HTML tag says I'm starting to write my HTML code. At the end of our document, we have the closing tag. So tags usually come in pairs. There's a few exceptions, but they usually come in pairs. An opening tag and a closing tag. And the opening and closing tags look the same, except the closing tag has this slash in front of it. So they always go inside angle brackets. The closing tag has a slash. So everything between the opening and the closing tag is HTML code. Inside of our HTML tag, or our HTML element, we have two main sections, the head and the body. So just like a person's head is on top of their body, we always put the head section on top of the body section. So the head section is information the browser should have, but it's not going to show up on the web page. So for example, this is the meta char set equals UTF-8. That is telling your browser what character encoding you're using. There are different ways to specify characters. You don't need to worry about that. Just know that we're always going to use UTF-8. Okay, again, we're telling it more information it doesn't need to know, or it needs to know, but the viewer won't see directly. So viewport, this is setting the size. The title, our viewer will see, but it won't be on the web page. It's going to be in the tab. So up here you can see all my tabs open. Each one has some text on it. So for example, I've got student notes open. So that is the title of that web page. Here the title of the web page is my web page. You don't actually see it in the preview window over here. When you run it, you actually have to open in a new tab. And now the title in the tab here is my web page, but it's not going to show up anywhere on the actual web page itself. All right, we also link to our CSS file. So if you want to add color or change the background or the font of your text, all of that has to do with style, and we write CSS code for that. We write it in a separate file, and so we have to link that CSS file with our CSS code to our HTML file. And to do that, we add in this link tag here, and this is one of those weird tags that doesn't have a closing tag. It just kind of stands by itself. It's both the opening and the closing tag in one. That's why it ends with this slash here. So we're linking our style.css to our HTML file. And sometimes you'll see other things in the head section, but that's all we have in here. So we get to our closing head tag. You'll notice it lines up nicely with the opening tag. We always want to make sure our opening and closing tags line up with each other so we can see if we are missing one. It's really easy if we are careful about our indentation to see if we're missing a tag somewhere. So after our head section comes our body section. So we've got our opening body tag. It's lined up with our closing body tag down here. And everything in the body section is what is going to show up on our web page. So I've got a paragraph here. The P tag is for paragraph, and you can see my paragraph over here. This script tag doesn't actually show up. We aren't going to be writing JavaScript in this class. If you take designing software for the web, you will write some JavaScript code, and that can make your web page interactive instead of just displaying information. But we aren't actually going to be writing it. It's just in here because REPL just adds that for us automatically. But everything else is going to show up if it's in the body section. You'll notice here that I have this grayed out text. It looks kind of different from everything else. This is a comment. So you can add comments to your code to explain what it does, leave yourself reminders. You can even put comments around code so you can block it out. So anything that's between this angle exclamation dash dash and the dash dash angle, none of that is going to be interpreted by the browser. It just ignores what's ever in between there. So you could put those symbols around some code that you're trying to test out. So maybe you don't want to have it taking effect while you're testing something. You could put it in a comment, run your code, and then when you want that code back and you want the browser to pay attention to it again, you can take out the comment marks. But it's also just useful just to put reminders to yourself in your code and just have the browser ignore it. So you can just write normal sentences. It doesn't have to be code in there. All right, so now let's add some more content to our web page. We can add a title. So you might want a title before the paragraph. And you have to be careful here because the title tag actually controls what's in your tab up here. It doesn't go on the actual web page. So even though we say it's the title, we're going to call it the heading. And the tag is the heading tag. So H1 is our biggest heading. You could see, if I back this up a little bit, there are actually H1 through H6, and each larger number means a smaller heading. So if I typed H2, it would be a little bit smaller. H3 would be a little bit smaller, and so on. But we're going to go with our largest heading for the heading on our web page. We'll call this My First Web Page. And then we put our closing tag /H1. And we can see what that looks like by running it. So you can see this nice big heading text at the top, and then underneath it we've got our paragraph. All right, if we wanted to add a subheading, so let's try out H2. So this is going to be a little bit smaller. It's like a subheading. Again, I have my closing tag there. If I run it, you can see it's a little bit smaller. And you can play with all the different numbers to see how the headings look. All right, so now we've got two different headings. We've got a paragraph. We can also add pictures. So to add pictures, we're going to use the img tag, short for image. And this is one of those weird ones that doesn't have a closing tag. It's kind of an all-in-one. So we don't need to worry about the closing tag. But we do need to tell it what picture we want to show. So we have to add some extra information inside the tag itself rather than between the opening and closing tags. So we're going to add what are called attributes. So attributes tell us information about our tag. We're going to add two. The first one is the source attribute. So we're going to tell it what picture to show. That's our source. So we do equals, and then inside of quotes, we're going to put the picture we want to show. So the first way that we can do this is we can put a link to a picture there. And I'm going to show you two ways to do this, but the first way is where we're just going to put the URL for an image. So let's say I want a beach picture. I find this nice picture of the beach, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to say open image in new tab. And that gives me a web page with just that picture on it. And I'm going to copy this URL. And it's just the URL for the picture. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to paste it in. So that URL is my source. And now I'm going to add my second attribute. And this one is called alt, A-L-T. And that stands for alternate text. So sometimes a web browser can't load a picture. We still want our users to see that there's supposed to be something there. So we're going to put a brief description of it here. So again, inside of double quotes, just like I did for my source attribute, I'm going to type in a short description of my picture. So beach with palm trees. So that'll be displayed if we can't see the image. The other time this is really useful is when people are looking at your browser and they're visually impaired, they will use a program that reads the web page to them. And when it gets to the picture, that program will read your alternate text. So it's really important that you have a good description in there so that those people will know what your picture is of. All right, so we have our source attribute, we have our alt attribute, and now let's test this out and see what it looks like. And over here in our preview, we can see that we've got an image. It's really large on the page. To resize it, you're going to use CSS. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but you can resize it, you can add a border around it, and so on. Okay. Another way to do pictures is to actually upload the file. So the first step is you come over here and you click on Upload File. You already want to have the picture saved to your device when you do this. So I'm going to go to where I saved my file in Downloads, and I called it bear. So I'm going to find it. It's bear.jpg. It's important to pay attention to this file ending. Common ones are JPEG and PNG. There are others. So I'm going to open it, and you'll see that now I have another file over here with that name. So now I've uploaded that file, but I need to add the code to tell it where to show that image. So I want that teddy bear picture to be after my paragraph, but before my beach picture. So in the code, I'm going to go after the paragraph, but before the beach picture. Add in the IMG tag again because I'm adding another image. And I'm still going to need those same two attributes, the source and the alt. So starting with source equals my double quotes. But this time, instead of pasting in a URL, I'm just going to type the name of the picture. So bear.jpg. And then my alt text. This should, again, be a brief description of what's in the picture. So I'm going to just say teddy bear. All right, so source and alt, those are the two attributes we need for images. I'm going to test it out, and we can see the teddy bear showing up there. So the two ways to add images are either upload the file or paste in the URL for the picture. All right, there are a lot of other elements that you can add to your web page. You can add lists, you can add tables, you can embed videos, the list goes on. I'm not going to go over them all here. W3 Schools is a great resource for learning about all of the different elements that you can add to your web page. So we're just going to stick with the headings, so the different size headings, the paragraph, and the image for this video.